Hello everyone, welcome to my July wrap-up video. I have 8 books to talk about. 3 of them were DNFs, so let's go ahead and start with those to get them out of the way. The first one was That Night in the Library, and I'm not going to attempt to say this author's name because I have no idea. But this one, luckily, I got from my own library because I did not like it. I did not make it that far in. I only read a few chapters and decided it wasn't for me. The writing style was very pretentious and academic, which just kind of rubs me the wrong way. I just don't like it. All of the characters were obnoxious, and there was a lot of them to try and keep track of. So yeah, I wasn't very far into the book when I realized that this just isn't a book for me. It was just kind of boring, if I'm being honest. So then next I had a NetGalley arc called Portraits of a Shadow. This one was also pretty boring, but I managed to make it halfway through before I finally gave up. So it wasn't like it was taking me forever to get through it. I was reading it pretty quickly. It is YA, which helps. But at the same time, I got halfway through and realized like nothing has happened yet at all. And I thought it was a little bit strange that this girl, her sister goes missing, and then her sister's next door neighbor in the same apartment complex just decides to go with her on this like road trip to find her sister, even though he claims he doesn't really know her sister at all. So like, why would he just leave for a few days with this random stranger to go find another stranger? Like, I'm sure it would make sense at the end. Like, I'm sure there's some kind of reason for it that we as the reader are not privy to, but I just thought that was a little bit strange. So I don't know. It was just more or less boring. Like, literally nothing had happened. They're trying to find her sister. There's some kind of painting that has white paint all over it. I think it's supposed to be like a retelling of The Picture of Dorian Gray. And I actually really love that classic book, and I've written my own mashup story that has to deal with that story. So it's not like I don't enjoy The Picture of Dorian Gray, because I do. But I didn't see any correlation to that. I didn't even know that this book was supposed to be about that until I started reading other people's reviews and was like, oh, I guess so. It does have to do with the painting. But I don't know. I didn't see the correlation. But again, I DNF'd it. So I'm sure by the end there would be a little bit more information on that. But I don't know. It just wasn't keeping my attention. It wasn't intriguing. This is supposed to be a horror novel, and there was nothing even teeny tiny, even remotely creepy about any of it. Like, there was no atmosphere, no creepiness, no unsettling moments. Like, there was nothing. Like, if somebody told me this was a horror, I would be like, really? Because it doesn't read like a horror, like, at all. It just wasn't for me. I realized halfway through that the most this book could get from me was a 3. So, like, what was the point at that point? I just didn't care. Okay, so the next book I DNF'd was my book club book, which I never DNF book club books usually, but I had to give up. And that was Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes, which makes me really sad because I actually really enjoyed Dead Silence, which was the first book by this author. And I was really looking forward to this one. And, to buy it in hardback when it first comes out and be excited about it. And then I just, I thought, oh, a book club book, I'll definitely get to it sooner than I thought. It's definitely one I wanted to read anyways. But it was so boring. I just could not get into it. But at the same time, I did get really, really sick for a week, and I was really having a hard time concentrating, and I was really having a hard time comprehending. And so that could have been a factor when reading this book. Like, maybe if I had been perfectly healthy, maybe things would have been different. But I don't know. There was like a few intriguing tidbits that kind of were like, oh, that's interesting. But most of the time, the things that are interesting are like a cliffhanger at the end of the chapter, and then immediately resolved. Oh, a cliffhanger. Oh, immediately resolved. And then we have like this backstory to our main character, and that part is the most interesting part of this book. But it's also very predictable. Like, you already know pretty much what happened. Like, you don't know all the details, but you get the broad picture of it. And so it was interesting. At the same time, it's like, okay, cool. Like, I already know what happened. And I don't know, everything was taking so long. Like, they're getting to the hab, and it takes like several chapters. They're gonna go get samples. It takes several chapters. And then they do this, and it was just like, nothing is happening. We're in the same spot doing nothing. Like, I don't know. And this one, I feel like the character in this was almost a carbon copy of her last character in her last book, Dead Silence, because they're on this like space mission and she's obviously not mentally fit to be there. But it's even worse in this one because she's the therapist and she's obviously has like mental issues and like PTSD and stuff. So she's had trauma in her past and she really shouldn't have been on this mission to begin with, which I don't know, some people find that intriguing because it makes her an unreliable narrator. For me personally, it kind of irritates me. So I don't know. Like I said, there was some parts that were kind of interesting, but I was halfway through and I'm like, I have to force myself to pick this book up. Like I was getting distracted by my phone every second because I just didn't want to pick this up. I didn't want to keep reading. And so that really tells me that I'm not enjoying this book when I feel like it's a chore and I have to pick it up instead of I want to. And that's not what reading should be about. Reading should be fun and exciting and escape from the world. If I feel like I need to force myself to read this like it's a homework assignment, then it's probably not worth my time to finish it. And luckily, because it is a book club pick, I can just go to the discussion and just get all the juicy spoilers without having to force myself to make it all the way through this book. So yeah, unfortunately this was a miss for me. And then I had a buddy read and we read The House That Horror Built by Christina Henry. And I actually really love Christina Henry's writing. I've read Near the Bone and The Horseman and I really enjoyed both of those and I was really excited to read something else by her. And I heard that this had like supernatural or haunted house vibes, which is like my favorite subgenre of horror. So I was so excited, and it was about like old vintage horror movies and this director that has all of this movie memorabilia in his house, and it just sounded really cool. But unfortunately, I did not love this book. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed my time with it, but I would maybe give it a 3-star. I don't even know how to describe it, especially without giving spoilers, but there was just certain aspects of this book that just didn't quite work for me. And the main character could be annoying in her decisions and in the ways she handled certain situations. She was kind of annoying and aggravating. And I don't know, the supernatural elements just weren't as creepy, I guess, as I wanted them to be. And there was parts of this book that were predictable and you knew it from like the first 2 chapters, but you're just waiting to get there or waiting for the character to finally make the decision she should have made when she first got to this house. Instead of just like, I hear this mysterious noise behind this door, but I'm not going to do anything about it till the very, very end. And that's just annoying. And I don't know. It was okay. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. 3 stars. So next week's video is about Frida McFadden because I've heard a lot of people claim that she plagiarizes some of her books and her stories. And so this month I have been reading a couple of her books because I've never read anything by her before. But I read 2 of her books and then 2 books to compare it to see if I think that she was plagiarizing these other authors. So I'm not going to speak to that part at all because obviously I have a whole video coming out on it. So if you're interested in hearing my thoughts about that, then go ahead and wait for next week's video. But I'm just going to speak about how I felt about the books themselves just on their own without speaking towards the plagiarism stuff. So I started out with Verity by Colleen Hoover. And I've actually never read anything by Colleen Hoover. I know she has a lot of romance books out, but I do like romance. I really do. And I buy them constantly and then never read them. But I don't know, I've just never been interested in Colleen Hoover for whatever reason, even though I know she's wildly popular. But Verity, I was interested in because it sounded more like a thriller instead of a romance. And so I was interested, and it's about an author. And I love a book about an author. And when I found out that this is one of the books that people compare to Frida McFadden, I was like, oh, what a golden opportunity to finally read this book. So let's talk about it. So I really loved this book in the beginning. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was fast-paced. I gobbled it up in 2 days, which for me is really fast. I average about 5 days per book, give or take. So anyways, I do think that this book is very fast-paced and very interesting, and I liked the writing style. But I did feel like the characters were a little bit shallow and one-dimensional, so that was a bit of a bummer. And then I also don't like sex in my books, and this has a lot of sex in it. Like every other chapter is a sex scene, and that just gets so boring. And I just don't like it. And it's like I could take out all the sex scenes except like one or two just to make her point, and this book would be the exact same. Like, you don't need it. I don't need to know that you're obsessed with having sex with your husband. I don't need it. I don't care. And some of it, quite frankly, was disgusting. So I didn't love that aspect of it, but everything else was intriguing. But I don't know. I actually felt this book was predictable. A lot of people probably would disagree with me on that, but I could tell you exactly what was going on pretty much from the beginning. But there was one aspect about the ending that did shock me, and I was like, oh shoot, I can't believe that happened. So that was shocking, but the aspect of the twist was predictable, if that makes sense. So I did see what was going on. I did know what the storyline was, and it really didn't deviate much from it. So I'd probably give this about a 3.5 star because I did enjoy it, but it wasn't like my favorite thing I've read. I will say though, trigger warnings for harm to children. I did find a few scenes very difficult as a mom to read. And so if that's one of your triggers, probably steer clear of this one. And there was also one part of the story that kind of annoyed me. And maybe it bugged me more because I'm an author, but she was supposed to be a ghostwriter for Verity. And first of all, she didn't even read the entire series. So she's just like, I'm just going to read the first book or two and then write like the 7th book in the series. Like, really? How do you expect to finish somebody else's series when you didn't even read the whole series? Like, that's just nonsensical to me. And then, like, the entire time she's like so nervous about it, and I don't know if I can do this. I can't write like Verity, and I don't know if I have the know-how or the knowledge. And, you know, the whole thing is Verity writes villains from the perspective of the villains, and so she was really nervous about that. But she's like, you know, I need the money, I need to do this. And then all of a sudden it's just like she banged out an outline and, oh yeah, here you go, publishers, I'm all finished. In just like a couple weeks. I was like, really? You just banged out an outline in a couple weeks for a book you haven't read the series for, and even though you were like so nervous and not writing it, and then all of a sudden like the next day, oh yep, here it is, here's the outline. Like, that was just so unbelievable, and it really annoyed me. So I don't know if that bugs other people that aren't writers, but for me personally, I found that really suspect. So take that for what you will. Okay, so for the book that gets compared to Verity is The Wife Upstairs by Frida McFadden. I just had an ebook copy of this one. And this one, I thought it was just as well written as Verity. And I thought it was just as fast paced, but also just as predictable. They both had, you know, similar plot lines, and so it was equally predictable. And this one, I liked the atmosphere and everything, but I didn't really like how Frida McFadden went about it, because she made the main character have like all these feelings of foreboding and I don't know if I should go there, I don't know if I should do this, and then she would just do it anyways. And like, I understand she's trying to foreshadow like the doom and gloom that's about to happen, and I know it's to add to the creepy atmosphere, and I do like that, but at the same time it makes your main character seem dumb because, you know, it's just like, oh, I have a really bad feeling about this. Now I'm gonna do it anyways. Which I know is, you know, pretty cliche when it comes to horror, even though this is a thriller, not a horror. But I don't know, it just bothers me sometimes, you know. I guess it depends on how it's done. And I just feel like it wasn't handled as cleverly, you know, like they didn't give any indication, like maybe she was actually excited at first. And so she has all of a sudden has this bad feeling, but you know, but I'm still really excited to go, or I really need the money or whatever, instead of just like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Oh well, like, I don't know, bothered me. And I really didn't like an aspect of the ending. I'm not going to tell you what that is, obviously, because it's a spoiler, but it's like she gives you the twist, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, I saw that twist coming. Cool. And then she did like a switcheroo, and oh no, this is really the twist. And you're like, oh, okay. Oh no, just kidding. It really was what you thought. The end. Like, I didn't like that. I thought it was a cheap trick, and I don't know. I just didn't enjoy that. And I didn't enjoy the epilogue. I feel like it could have been left out, in my opinion. Like, I didn't feel like it was necessary. I don't know. I mean, some people might like it because it was kind of edgier or whatever and maybe added to the story a bit. But for me personally, I could have done without the epilogue. So anyways, so then the next ones that I read for that video is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, which was compared to The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. And, you know, I don't want to speak too much about these books because I do have a whole video about them coming up. But I will say that I enjoyed The Housemaid more. I enjoyed the main character more. The main character in this one was extremely obnoxious and I did not like her. But to be fair, you're not really supposed to like her. So, I don't know. I just don't like following unlikable characters personally. So I related more to this main character. And then I also enjoyed the ending more to this book. So that's really all I want to say about it. I just don't want to say too much until the other video comes out. But just know that I did enjoy The Housemaid a little bit more than I enjoyed the Liv Constantine one. And there you have it. That's all the books I read in the month of July. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know by hitting that thumbs up. And if you aren't subscribed yet and you want to be, please hit that notification bell so that you'll never miss a video from me. And I will catch you next time. See ya.